Hey friends, welcome back to the Irony Shelf. Tonight, an entry from our audio archive, The Romancers by Saki. Now prepare to experience The Park Bench Prevaricator. It was autumn in London, that blessed season between the harshness of winter and the fickle insincerities of summer. It is a hopeful season when one buys bulbs for the garden and plans for the new year, believing perpetually in the return of spring and good things yet to come. Morton Crosby sat on a bench in a quiet corner of Hyde Park, lazily enjoying a cigarette. He watched a pair of snow geese strolling by, the male looking like a white reflection of his russet-colored mate. Out of the corner of his eye, Crosby noticed with some interest a figure hovering nearby, who had passed his seat again and again at closing intervals, like a cautious crow circling a tempting morsel. Inevitably, the stranger settled onto the bench within easy speaking distance. His shabby clothes, wild beard, and shifting, evasive eyes marked him as a seasoned petitioner, the sort of man who preferred the theatrical struggle of winning a stranger's sympathy to the simple effort of an honest trade. For a moment, the newcomer stared straight ahead with a heavy, focused gaze, as if lost in a difficult memory. Then his voice broke the silence with the smooth, practiced tone of a man who has a tale to tell, one well worth a moment of any listener's time. "It's a strange world," the old man said. When the opening statement met with silence, he recast his thoughts into a question. "I dare say you found it to be a strange world, mister." "As far as I am concerned," said Crosby, "the strangeness has worn off in the course of 36 years. Said the old man, "I could tell you things that you'd hardly believe. Marvelous things that have truly happened to me. Nowadays, there is little interest in marvelous things that have actually happened," said Crosby coolly. "The professional writers of fiction do it so much better. For instance, my neighbors tell me wonderful, incredible stories of what their prized hounds and clever pets have done. I never listen to them. On the other hand, I have read The Hound of the Baskervilles 3 times. The old man shifted restlessly on the bench. Then he ventured onto new ground. "I assume you are a professing Christian," he observed. "I am a prominent, and I think I may say an influential member of a very old, very private society of philosophers from the Near East," said Crosby, embarking on his own flight of fancy. The seasoned practitioner was clearly thrown off balance by this sudden roadblock to his opening move. However, his retreat was only momentary. "The Near East. I should never have taken you for a philosopher from those parts," he remarked, with a faintly offended air. "I am not," said Crosby. "My father was an Afghan." "An Afghan," said the other, struck into a bewildered silence for a moment. Then he regained his footing and renewed his campaign. "Afghanistan. We have had some wars with that land. Yet, I suspect that instead of fighting it, we might have learned from it instead. A prosperous land, I am told. No real poverty to be found there." He raised his voice on the word poverty with a suggestion of intense feeling. Crosby saw the opening and avoided it. "It possesses, nevertheless, a multitude of highly gifted and resourceful beggars," he said. "Had I not spoken so dismissively of marvelous events, I would share the tale of Ibrahim and the 11 camel-loads of blotting paper. Alas, the conclusion has quite slipped my mind." "My own life story is a curious one," said the stranger, apparently suppressing any interest in the history of Ibrahim. "I was not always the man you see before you. We are understood to undergo a complete change every 7 years," said Crosby, offering a dryly scientific explanation for the previous remark. "I mean to say, I have not always been found in such dire straits as those I endure at present," the stranger persisted, with a dogged determination. "That strikes me as rather rude," said Crosby, with a cold formality, "considering that you are currently addressing a man celebrated as one of the most gifted conversationalists of the Afghan frontier." "I did not mean it in that fashion," said the seasoned practitioner hastily. "I have been very interested in your conversation. I was alluding to my unfortunate financial situation. You may not believe it, but at this very moment, I am entirely without a farthing. I see no way to get any money either, for the next few days. I suspect you have never known such a predicament," he added. "In the town of Yom," said Crosby, "which is in southern Afghanistan, and which also happens to be my birthplace, there was a Chinese philosopher who used to say that one of the 3 supreme human blessings was to be entirely without coin. I forget what the other 2 were." "I dare say," said the stranger, in a tone that betrayed no warmth for the philosopher's memory. "And did he practice what he preached? That is the true test." "He lived happily," said Crosby, with a tranquil air, "with very little money or resources. Then I suspect he had friends who would assist him generously whenever he found himself in difficulties, such as those I endure at present." "In the city of Yom," said Crosby, "it is not necessary to have friends in order to obtain help. Any citizen of Yom would assist a stranger, as a matter of course." The seasoned practitioner was now genuinely interested. The conversation had, at last, taken a favorable turn. "If someone, like myself for instance, one found in undeserved difficulties, asked a citizen of that town you speak of for a modest loan to cover a few days of misfortune, 5 shillings, or perhaps a rather larger sum, would it be granted to him as a matter of course?" "There would be a certain tradition first," said Crosby. "One would take him to a wine shop and treat him to a flask of wine, and then, after an interval of spirited conversation, one would place the desired sum in his hand and bid him a good day. It is a roundabout way to conduct a simple matter, but in the East, all ways are roundabout." The listener's eyes were glittering. "Ah," he exclaimed, with a sharp sneer cutting through his words, "I suppose you've abandoned those generous customs since you left your town. You don't practice them now, I expect." "No one who has lived in Yom," said Crosby fervently, "and remembers its green hills covered in apricot and almond trees, no one who recalls the cold water rushing like a caress from the mountain snows to dash beneath the little wooden bridges, no one who remembers these things and treasures the memory, would ever abandon its unwritten laws and customs. To me, they are as binding as though I still lived in that hallowed home of my youth." "Then if I was to ask you for a small loan," began the greybeard fawningly, leaning in with a hopeful air and hurriedly wondering how large he might safely make his request. "If I was to ask you for, say, at any other time, certainly," said Crosby. "In the months of November and December, however, it is strictly forbidden. for anyone of our race to give or receive loans or gifts. In fact, one does not willingly speak of them. It is considered unlucky. We will therefore end this discussion. "But it is still October," exclaimed the adventurer with an eager, angry whine as Crosby rose from his seat. "We have 8 days yet to the end of the month." "The Afghan November began yesterday," said Crosby severely. And in another moment he was striding across the park, leaving his recent companion scowling and muttering furiously on the seat. "I don't believe a word of his story," he chattered to himself. "A pack of nasty lies from beginning to end. I wish I'd told him so to his face. Calling himself an Afghan." The bitter mutterings that escaped from him for the next quarter of an hour went far to support the old truth that while a master of the artifice loves the game, he has no appetite for being the subject of a rival's masterpiece. And here, dear listener, we conclude our reading of The Romancers, written by Saki, and respectfully adapted for the modern listener. Today, the word romancer invariably suggests a person preoccupied with roses and candlelight. But in Saki's time, the word was far more dangerous and delightful. It referred to the master of the tall tale, a seasoned artificer of elaborate fictions who prioritized the flair of the narrative over the drudgery of facts. Within the confines of our Edwardian drawing room, the word remains a badge of creative mendacity, marking one who fabricates tales, not for malice, but for the sheer, shimmering art of it. If you find a certain charm in these classic stories, we invite you to subscribe and join us here at the Irony Shelf. Your support allows us to continue curating these volumes for the audio archive. Thank you for listening. I look forward to sharing our next story with you very soon.